name's Cohen. I'm here with Countercept.
Okay. So how are you getting on at the conference?
Yeah, it's really good. There's a whole range of people coming to learn more about where security is today in relation to where it was last year. Looking to see how they can respond to the evolving challenges with regards to detection, prevention, response and recovery.
So in your particular field, what are the biggest challenges for you at the moment?
So we work primarily in the detection and response space, and I think the biggest challenges really are around consumers and organisations understanding that the ability to detect attacks is today as much of a priority as being able to prevent them. There's been a bit of a sea change, a bit of a mindset shift in people understanding that essentially they will get in, and it's a case of being able to detect that when it happens. And so we've seen a shift in budget. We've moved from preventative measures, so your firewalls, antivirus, next-gen antivirus, more interesting things that are being released all the time. Some of these are out there, but the understanding that they will be bypassed at some point by a determined attacker depends on the profile of your organisation, and that if you don't then have the detection mechanisms in place, you'll never know. And so that's really the challenge that I think we're facing today.
So why is something like threat intelligence so important at the moment?
It is important, and there's different ways to describe threat intelligence. I think what's important is strategic threat intelligence that relates to your business. So where is your business moving? Different markets, different verticals, different products, what's on the roadmap, intellectual property, things that are going to change, the threat actors that may be interested in what you do. That is of crucial importance to then dictate how the security strategy lines up with the business strategy and can support it rather than work against it. What we're seeing of less importance is threat intelligence, which might comprise of a list of known bad IP addresses that you plug into a firewall, or a list of domains which are known to have been malicious in the past. Because ultimately, if someone's after your organisation, they'll just set up a new one, and it's of less relevance.
One thing that seems to be very much talked about at the moment is that security ultimately comes down to people, and people are usually making mistakes. How do you think we can better educate people? And do you think government should be doing a bit more to promote good security within organisations and people? It's just general day-to-day mentality.
Yeah, I think so. There's two parts to that question. Can governments do more? Is it government's responsibility? Ultimately, the cyber threat is one which the initial impact's on an organisation, but to the UK economy particularly, it's almost like death by 1,000 cuts. So, critical national infrastructure, critical organisations, systemic financial organisations to the UK economy, right down to small businesses. All of those are affected and degraded by cyber attacks, which over the long term is of detriment to the UK at large. Should the government be doing more to educate, particularly smaller organisations around that? Perhaps they could look at that. The likes of the event here today is a great way for people, organisations to get involved and see what other people are doing, and hopefully we'll see more of that. Second part of your question, are people aware enough of the threat? I think the conversations we're having are different from the conversations we were having a year ago. There have been high-profile breaches over the past 12 months, which really have brought, cyber, for want of a better word, to front of mind, and it's been something that's now being, discussed at executive level, senior management level, even board level. Shareholders are asking the right kinds of questions now, whereas before it was a IT problem, it's now a business problem, which comes back to aligning with business strategy along with security strategy. So always more that can be done, but I think we're heading in the right direction.
So do you think there are definite difference between the cyber security issues that SMEs face and those that larger organisations face?
There are differences in the threat actors which are motivated to target both. So largely at the moment, both organisations can be breached by determined threat actor. So it's a fact of doing business. The motivation to target each and the profile of targeting each is different. So at the moment, your more advanced criminal groups motivated by money, they're going to go after where the money is, which is largely where the larger organisations are, or those which deal with ultra high net worth individuals. Or so it depends on the threat profile. But generally, your smaller organisations, lower profile, are going to be targeted more with kind of generic malware campaigns, generic ransomware. We're seeing more and more kind of social engineering attempts designed to, conveyancing, for example, designed to socially engineer money out of smaller firms in a kind of scattergun approach rather than a targeted approach. But to summarise that, I guess the threat is different, but the capability to target both is there.
So what are the main threats organisations are telling you that they're suffering at the moment?
So I guess you could, for an enterprise level organisation who has a lot to lose, so customer data is a hot topic at the moment. Intellectual property is always up there. I think this year, as opposed to in the last perhaps 3 or 4, we're seeing mergers and acquisitions data being of a higher priority in terms of what critical assets that certain nation states might be taking a look at. That's definitely up the agenda this year as opposed to before.
And are organisations experiencing higher incidences of things like ransomware, for example?
So ransomware is, as you know, has exploded over the past 24 months or so, and that's been they're run as professional organisations that make a lot of money. So they have excellent helplines you can ring up and pay the ransom with, and they'll guide you through setting up a Bitcoin account so you can settle your debt and get your data back. And it works. A lot of people are making an awful lot of money from organisations that aren't prepared to restore their backups, wipe the slate clean in a very effective way. And ransomware is very, very challenging to detect and prevent in a timely fashion so that you can stop its impact. Because of that, there's more and more variants being released. The latest variants, Cryptologic 4 particularly, which have links to particular nation-state bodies, particularly, are very, very challenging to deal with. So, there has been a big increase over the past 24 months in ransomware. And on the ransom theme, so it's not just ransomware, we're seeing more customer data, particularly being lifted within the threat to publish it in return for ransom money. So that's not ransomware per se, but we'll publish your data unless you pay us. It's the same kind of business model, but with a different criminal approach.
Now, back in the 90s, you had what were termed script kiddies who were just out to prove themselves that they could hack or try to hack the Pentagon or whatever. I mean, these days it's more about organised crime and making money. Is there still a fair amount of people just trying to show off? Do you still see that trend, or is that reduced now to a fairly small problem?
I'd say script kiddies are inspired today in the same way that they were before, perhaps more so. If we relate it to criminal activity, criminals go after what they see in the news. They see a breach at one firm, they'll go online, discuss with each other who they should target next based on what they've read in the FT that day. Script kiddies are no different. They see what's going on in the news. They get inspired by breaches that are reported perhaps more than they were previously and think, I want to have a go at that because that sounds cool. Are we able to better defend against script kiddies than we were? Yeah, we are, absolutely. And a lot of the companies here have got some products and services that enable the consistent detection of malware and breaches based on off-the-shelf products that are off-the-shelf toolkits that script kiddies deploy. So we're in a place where we can detect them more consistently, but the problem is still there, if not growing.
So So have we got enough resources, enough manpower to resource trying to protect organisations? Because there seems to be a bit of a skill shortage. How are we going to turn that around? And what would you say to encourage people who might be thinking of going into the industry to get them there?
So yeah, at the moment there is a skill shortage. The industry is crying out for good people who understand that it's a good industry to get into. It's a growth industry. There are a lot of opportunities. From a skills perspective, I think the industry to date has been too blinkered in recruiting purely from cybersecurity tracks at university, or recruiting from similar IT programs. Or I think the industry can do more to move people in sideways from job fields or university courses that display the kind of logic and understanding and acumen that's required to do the cyber job. So that kind of logic and intelligence side of things, but aren't necessarily thinking about cyber at the moment. So I think we've been a bit blinkered so far, and we should perhaps cast the net a bit wider to other fields where there's a lot of good people with excellent talents that we could leverage immediately, because the industry is growing.
Well, one thing that BCS is looking at now, we're trying to, our underlying message is making IT good for society, and one of the things that we're looking at is the personal data challenge. So we're trying to get into people's heads that they need to take more responsibility for looking after their own data. I mean, do you know of any good I'm trying to think of the word, institutions or programs which are trying to get the message out, or do you think more should be done by governments to make people realise that this is something that we all need to take responsibility for?
So that's a really challenging one, because I think so a lot of the media agenda is driven by wanting to influence the young people. Young people, when it comes to data security, don't care. So they put their life on social media. It's about exposing as much of their data to as many people as possible, because that's how they operate. When it comes to their personal financial implications of data insecurity, so perhaps they've been phished, or their own bank details have been compromised, they also understand, or people understand, that that's not going to affect them personally. So again, they don't really care about the consequences of personal data loss. If the worst happens, the bank's going to refund my money. It's not my problem. So I do feel perhaps that while I wouldn't want to expose anyone to personal loss through not understanding the implications of clicking on a phishing email or having their account details compromised, I do feel that people should perhaps take some more responsibility and think twice, because at the moment there's a massive safety net under everyone when it comes to being compromised personally, alongside a culture of I'm going to share as much of my data as possible. It's kind of a perfect storm where people are exposed perhaps more than they should be. So perhaps an education program, government-led, perhaps might be a stepping stone. We are seeing some of that. We do see government advertising budget deployed to try to make people understand. We've seen major high street banks do it as well. Obviously, they're the people that lose out when it comes to account details being compromised and criminals taking money. So we are seeing that, but ultimately, I think that a lot more needs to be done to get people to understand that message.
So finally, where do you think we are with in relation to the battle between the good guys and the bad guys? I mean, you're optimist. Do you think we'll ever crack this particular nut?
So it's not a nut that can be cracked. It's an evolutionary arms race. And if you come here last year, 2 years ago, you come here next year, you'll see different products and services evolved in relation to different challenges. So we always think that we've plugged one particular problem, and then